I'm Vicki Hogarth, and this is a Newsbreak 26 Special Report. Premier Higgs and other government leaders, including Minister of Justice Andrea Mason, met with First Nations chiefs on Thursday to discuss issues of systemic racism in New Brunswick's policing and justice system. I sat down with Mason in St. George over the weekend to get her perspective on how this meeting went. So, Andrea, can you tell me a little bit about the second meeting with the First Nations chiefs this week? How did it go and what was your feeling afterwards?
It's completely different to the first meeting. So the first meeting was actually all done through technology. So we had some chiefs who were on the phone, we had others that were there by Skype. We weren't able to actually see everyone and it was a little bit challenging. So this meeting was actually held at the Crowne Plaza with a room that would accommodate everyone because of course it's still COVID and we want to make sure that we are concerned about protecting everybody. But this time it was a face-to-face meeting. So we were all in the room. And so it was significantly different. And I would say it was incredibly powerful. So the meeting started with a smudging and a prayer and introductions. And we were able to sit and to listen and to hear people's voices as they spoke their concerns for the future. And I found it actually very powerful.
What do you think meaningful next steps would be in terms of what the First Nations chiefs are asking for? What do you think the province should do?
So first and foremost, I'm only going to speak from my perspective as Justice Minister. And I'm really glad they had the opportunity to share with you my perspective. Because in some ways, I feel the burden entirely because I have that term justice in my title. But justice is so much more than just my department. It's very large. And the justice review that they're looking for would extend beyond what I have authority over, but extend to questions with respect to public safety, right into the incarceration, the system that we have. So it would be a very large review.
In terms of addressing systemic racism as a Minister of Justice, how do you do that? What are you looking at now to take some kind of impactful and meaningful first steps going forward?
Yeah, and I think, again, that's really important, and keeping it narrowed to my situation. From day one, when I first became Justice Minister, November 9th, 2018, one of my priorities my main priority was access to justice. And a key component of that is for First Nations. So I am quick to acknowledge that we have a long way to go here in New Brunswick as far as improving access to justice for First Nations. And one of the things that I have struggled with, being very new to this job, is how we go about facilitating that. And I understand wholeheartedly that it needs to be led by First Nations. Clearly, if I say these are the things that we're going to do for First Nations, then it's me again imposing my way, government's way, on First Nations. So I really welcome the opportunity to work with First Nations communities to make improvements to a system that clearly does have systemic biases. And I'm looking forward to that. We've already done some things. I'm not sure if you're aware. One of the very first things that we did was we introduced the eagle feather into court proceedings. So you're probably aware that when you start a court proceeding, many people will be asked to swear on the Bible. And now First Nations individuals have the opportunity to hold an eagle feather for when giving testimony. And I think that's a big win for us, something that we're pretty proud of. But it's really only just the start of a much bigger look into what we need to do.
Are there any other ways, from your perspective, to involve First Nations, whether it is in policing? How do we integrate better?
Mm-hmm. And I'll leave that part of it, the policing part, to the Minister of Public Safety and to the Premier to deal with, because that's more their bailiwick than mine. But there's certainly a lot that we need to do. So we have extreme vacancies in our system, for one, in that we are looking to move forward on putting Indigenous court workers into our court system. We know that we are lacking we have no First Nation judges at this point in time. We do not have First Nations Crown prosecutors in our system. But we need to take a step back and ask, well, why is that happening? And Actually, one of the chiefs, I am really grateful for the information that he provided. He indicated in our meeting that we just had that there are only 5 First Nations lawyers who are practicing in the province of New Brunswick. So you can imagine if we're looking at a pool of individuals to be able to fill these positions, we do have a very small pool. So we have to step back and say, why is this happening, and what can we do to support communities to make sure that we can fill vacancies that are very much needed.
A news and public affairs production of CHCO-TV, New Brunswick's only source for independent community television.